Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I am your host, Nelson, here on this Thursday afternoon, and we've got a lot of things that I'd want to talk about in this podcast for today. So for starters, in the first segment, we're going to look at Joel Embiid. He's going, again, I know this, these first segments have always been about Joel Embiid, but now it's actually good news in regards to Embiid, but it's not really good news overall for the Sixers. They can never always just get good news. It's usually just some good, and then you take the good with the bad along with that as well. I'll explain that a little bit later if you guys have not read the title yet. But then in the second segment, we are going to talk about the top 10 rookies in the NBA so far according to the NBA rookie ladder. We're just going to go ahead and talk about that, whether or not I agree with it, what my opinions on it, my overall thoughts on that as well. And then in the third segment, we're going to be looking at some hot takes for the NBA season right now. As we know, the season is still underway, but we're going to look at some of the hot takes that I've been looking at and I've been seeing over on the internet, and we're just going to go ahead and talk a little bit about them because I think some of them are pretty interesting. And it's not necessarily in regards to the season. Like, it could be hot takes that are just hot takes overall in the NBA, and we're going to go ahead and look at some of them in the third segment. Then in the fourth segment, we're going to recap all of the games that happened yesterday, and we also have a special fifth segment at the end of the fourth segment, so be sure to stay tuned for that if you guys are interested. Before I begin, I'd like to remind everybody that we love to hear what you guys have to say during the show, whether you guys have a hot take, whether you guys have a burning question, or whether you guys have anything that you're dying to share. We're all ears. If you really want your comment and or question to get noticed, then I recommend using Super Chat. You just click on the $ below the chat box and you can send in your comments and or donations that way. If Super Chat's not really your thing, then that's totally fine. You can always use the link displayed below the ticker on every show segment. If you don't want to use Super Chat, and the link is gsmcpodcast.net, you can send in your comments and or donations that way as well. Either or really help the show. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and get into the first segment, which is going to be focusing on Joel Embiid. Once again, I know I've talked about Joel Embiid constantly in these first segments, but there's always something going on with the 76ers, at least for this year. I was sort of expecting the year to be smooth sailing for the 76ers, but so far it's been the opposite of that. And this is the first positive news that they've gotten aside from Paul George finally returning. He did play against the Phoenix Suns, even though he was the reason why they ended up losing in that game. But again, hindsight's 2020. Like I said in the last segment, I personally would have given the ball to Maxey to try to end the game, but they gave it to Paul George, and that's that. But when you have a choice between either Maxey or Paul George to take the shot, if you are the 76ers, I think you'd imagine you'd be all right with either one of them taking the shot. But I personally would have rather had Maxey, but that's just me. Now, in regards to Embiid, so Embiid has now been considered Embiid is now eligible to play. So he's finally eligible to play. However, if you guys tuned into the previous segment that I did, then you guys also know that he would be suspended for 3 games. So he is the 3 games that he's eligible to play in are the 3 games that are coming up, which means that Joel Embiid is supposed to be scheduled to play against the Knicks. That is going to be where he makes his debut. And of course, that's when he makes his debut. I mean, the Knicks are the team that ended up eliminating him from the postseason last year. And the game is scheduled to happen on Tuesday. They play in Philly, and excuse me. They also play on primetime, 7:30 TNT. So for any of you guys that want to tune into that game, you guys are really going to be in for a lot. But yeah, this is sort of the expectations with Joel Embiid. Again, this is just the expectations because like what happened previously, we all expected Joel Embiid to be eligible to play against the Detroit Pistons, and that ultimately did not end up happening for reasons we have no idea why. But regardless, it didn't. So I'm not entirely sure whether or not he is supposed to, well, he's going to play against New York, but he should. Like, this is the expectation, and he should be eligible to be able to play in that game. And if he's not, and if for some reason something comes up where he's not, then I'm just convinced that he doesn't want to play basketball anymore. Like, that's genuinely where it seems like that's genuinely the vibe that I sort of get coming from Joel Embiid. And the Sixers, they are scheduled to play the Lakers tomorrow. Joel Embiid will not be able to play in that game because he's suspended. Then on Sunday, he is scheduled to play, well, the 76ers are scheduled to play the Hornets. And then afterwards, on Tuesday, they'll be scheduled to play the Knicks. So, not to mention the fact that they ended up losing to Phoenix the other day. This means that the 76ers right now, they are 1-6. And they really have to, they'll play the Lakers at home. This should be an easy win for the Lakers, but again, the Lakers are in a little bit of a slump right now. More on them later. And it's not really looking so clear exactly how the future of the 76ers and what that's going to be. Because if you think that Joel Embiid being suspended was bad enough and him not playing was bad enough, now there's another problem, and it's another injury problem. Tyrese Maxey has recently is expected to miss a couple of weeks because of a right hamstring injury, according to ESPN, which this is really, really bad. This is bad news for the 76ers. The most available player, one of the youngest good players that the 76ers have, is now going to miss a couple of weeks. And this is just bad news. Now, I'm not saying that, the 76ers were, winning games with Maxey. Of course, I mean, it's really difficult when it's just Maxey out there on the court, but it's better to have Maxey than to not have Maxey. Like, you're giving yourself a chance if you have Maxey. And again, maybe you're not, honestly, now to think of it. Because with the way Maxey has been playing, he's been playing rather inefficient. It seems like he lost the ability to shoot. Maybe because he was lifting a little bit too much. I have no idea. But that was the same issue that happened with Westbrook. I remember before Westbrook started lifting a little bit more, trying to, get buff to have the ability to be able to get rebounds. It ended up costing him his jump shot. More on Russell Westbrook later, by the way. But that was sort of an issue that happened with Westbrook through the latter half of his career. And now this is happening a little bit earlier with Maxey. Obviously, he's still young. He can still easily develop a shot, with while the season progresses. But again, this injury may set the 76ers back a little bit more. Now, I believe they still have, I believe Paul George is still going to be eligible for a majority of the season. I don't really expect him to not be eligible, but another problem that the 76ers would have with him being eligible is the fact that he is going to be, for the most part, assuming that Joel Embiid continues with this trend, he's probably going to be alone for these next few weeks. Because, again, the 76ers and Joel Embiid, they both agreed that they don't want to play back-to-back games. And if the 76ers ever end up getting a back-to-back game, then chances are Joel Embiid is not going to end up playing in one of them. And this is just, this is essentially forcing Paul George to end up going in some of these games alone, which I think is really, really bad. And I think it's really soft because it's like, why on earth why is this even an option? Like, the fact that it's an option and the fact that the 76ers are allowing it is incredibly soft in my opinion. But that's just me. Let me know what you guys think about it in the comments. Now, with Maxey being injured, again, this is just like your best ability is your availability, and Maxey has so far been the only one out of these two players who has been available whenever they needed him to. And if Paul George goes out with an injury, then this season might be over for the 76ers, and this might be another failure. And I understand you're not really supposed to expect success immediately when a new team is assembled, regardless of their star power, especially recently now in today's NBA. But still, it's like, this is bad. Like, this is some really bad news for the 76ers, and their expectations for this season, at least my expectations for them, was that they were going to be a top team in the Eastern Conference. And it's just been the opposite of that, and it's also been the opposite for another team in the Eastern Conference, which I might get into a little bit later. But again, this is just really, really not good. This is really bad, and I mean, I hope Maxey gets well. I'm sure we all hope he gets well. I love seeing Maxey hoop. And we'll see just how healthy Paul George can remain for the rest of the season and how healthy Joel Embiid can remain for the rest of the season. But again, this just is not good for the Sixers. This is like, we're lucky. I mean, they are lucky that it's a little bit earlier in the season because, there's still plenty of time to go ahead and fix that. And there's still plenty of time to, amend these setbacks and make yourself a contending team in the later half of the season, right? That's still totally possible. But these early signs and these early issues, I think they only spell disaster for the future, which is why I'm a little bit concerned about this. Because, again, this is just only the start of the season. So, again, I might be a little bit over-exaggerating, but if this is a sign of what is to come with the 76ers, then this might not be good for them, which, again, it's really, really not ideal. But that's really all that I have for this first segment. So now we're going to go ahead and go into the second segment where I talk about the top 10 rookies from this draft class and, how they've been playing so far. So again, this is the top 5 rookie rankings. So I'll be right back after this short break. Be sure to stay tuned.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown. Get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits, some losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip, you choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
And we are back with the second segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this second segment, we are going to be looking at the top 10 rookies. This is just the rookie ladder. So we're going to be looking at all of these players that are in the top 10 and, my overall opinions on them, what I think of this list. And before I begin, I would like to remind everybody that we love to hear what you guys have to say during the show. Whether you guys have a hot take, whether you guys have a burning question, something that you've just been dying to share, we're all ears. If you really want your comment and or question to get noticed, then I recommend using Super Chat. You just click on the $ below the chat box and you can send in your comments and or donations that way. Super Chat's not really your thing, that's totally fine. You can always use the link displayed below the ticker on every single show segment as well. And again, you can send in your comments and or donations that way. The link is gsmcpodcast.net. You can send in your donations. Really helps the show, makes it much more interactive between myself and you guys. So let's go ahead and get into these rookie rankings. Now, there's going to be a lot of people that you don't really expect to be on this list. And I will say this is probably in the beginning, a lot of people were suggesting that this was going to be one of the more weaker draft classes in the NBA. I thought they were being a little bit dramatic because we haven't yet seen a game played from them. But so far, those predictions are turning out to be true. And we'll start off with this list. So number 1 is not Joel Embiid. In fact, it's actually Zach Edey. right? And honestly, I completely agree with this, especially after his last game that he played with the against the Nets. He put up a stat line that has never been put up before, aside from since Hakeem Olajuwon. And his averages for the season so far, he's only played in 19 minutes per game. He's averaging 10 points, 6 rebounds, 0.4 assists, 0.4 steals, but he's also shooting 64% from the field and 50% from three. So by far, so far, it seems like he is the best rookie in this draft class. Again, so far. We're only a couple of games in. In fact, he's only played in 9 games. So this might be a little bit early, but these are the rankings and these are the stats. And I really have no problem with Zach Edey being ranked so high. Again, most of these players that I expected to be ranked on this list are not ranked, and that's because they just aren't living up to the hype as of right now. So there's really nothing else that needs to be said about that aside from the fact that they're just not living up to the hype. The next player on this list is Bub Carrington. Definitely not somebody that I was expecting to be ranked at number 2, but his play, and again, this is only a 6-game sample size, but so far his play has been rather solid. And I understand, he's on the Wizards, so it's not really much of, English. It might not have much of an impact for their season. Like, his performances aren't necessarily producing many wins, but still, compared to the rest of the rookies in this draft class, he's been playing rather solid. He's averaging 10 points, 43% from the field, 35% from 3, 4 rebounds, along with almost 5 assists to go along with that. And those are solid numbers, especially when you compare them to the rest of the rookies in this in this list. And that's sort of, you have to sort of take every single ranking with a little bit of with a grain of salt, not only because it's still rather early in the season, but this draft class is incredibly weak, it seems like it. Now, I will say that we don't truly get to see exactly what these rookies are made of until, in my opinion, after All-Star break. I remember when Trae Young in his rookie season, he was solid, but he was also rather inefficient. But then once All-Star break came along, and then after the All-Star break, he drastically improved. And he was I thought that he was rather underrated as a rookie in the NBA. I mean, a lot of people were mainly talking about Luka Doncic and how good Luka is, but I really felt like Trae Young, he was still pretty solid and he was still producing way more than what I expected from a rookie in that draft class. But so I will say that they are a little bit early, but these are the rankings so far. Next on the list is Jalen Wells, excuse me. He's playing for the Phoenix Suns, and the Phoenix Suns are they're a solid team right now. I mean, they're one of the few teams that has only one loss, I believe. I believe they've only got one loss so far in this season. Actually, no, they ended up getting 2. Excuse me. But again, their record is one of the best in the Western Conference. And on top of that, Jalen Wells recently against the Lakers, he dropped 20 points, ended the game 7 for 10 from the field, 5 for 7 from 3, and ended up recording 1 assist, 3 rebounds, along with 1 steal to go along with that. And he played in 28 minutes. And 10 points he's averaging for the season, 41% from the field, 39% from 3 as well, and 3 rebounds along with 1 assist. So he's producing pretty solidly, especially on a team that I don't think really expected much production coming in from their rookies. And again, no one really expected him to be ranked at number 3. So this is rather impressive coming in from Jalen Wells. I will say that. And let me see. Let's go next on the list. Next on the list is going to be did I include? Oh no, I didn't. That's a little embarrassing. Oh god. I accidentally did not include Ryan Dunn, and I didn't include Jalen Wells, and crap, what is wrong with me? He actually plays for Memphis. That's a little bit of an embarrassing mistake right there. That's my bad. But again, his averages are incredibly solid, and that was very, very embarrassing. I don't know why. This is actually Ryan Dunn on this list. Good lord, I need a this is not good. But then again, this just shows just how bad this draft class really is, because no one is getting talked about nearly as much as they should. In fact, they only get talked about when they have a really solid game. I don't know why Jalen Wells wasn't. I don't know why I don't have Jalen Wells on this graphic, but that's besides the point. Again, that is very embarrassing. I'm sorry for that. Now, Ryan Dunn, who is up here right now, and the guy that you see, Diggs, by the way. Hey, what's up? Nothing much. I mean, I kind of made a really bad mistake, in these rankings, but it's whatever. Now we'll move along with it. Ryan Dunn, Phoenix Suns. He's not really getting that many minutes. I mean, the last game he only played 9, and the game before that he only played 10. So not a very big sample size that I can really go off of here. 6 points, 45% from the field, 39% from 3, along with 2 rebounds. And again, you got to take a lot of these with a grain of salt because these games and most of these rookies, they aren't getting much minutes. And none of them are really playing all that well, especially the next rookie on this list, which is Alexander Czar. And I've said this before, Alexander Czar I think he should be talked about a little bit more for just, how bad of a pick this was. He has not been playing efficient at all. He's averaging 9 points, 7 rebounds, 1 assist, but he's also shooting 36% from the field and 20% from 3, which is awful. The one good game that he's had in recent memory was against the Miami Heat, where he had 17 points, 7 for 11 from the field. But again, he also recorded 4 blocks along with that. But this is the second overall pick in the draft. I really expected him to be a lot more solid, especially since he's getting way more minutes than a majority of the players that I just mentioned. In the last game against the Warriors, he only scored 10 points and went 3 for 10. In the game against the Hawks, he scored 11 points, 3 for 9. In the game at the Hawks, he scored 7 points, 3 for 11. And against the Cavs, he scored 12 points, 4 for 10. Against Boston, he scored 2 points, 1 for 7. He's still getting the blocks. So, he's averaging 2.8 blocks in the regular season so far, which is rather impressive. But again, if you're the number 2 pick in the draft, you're expected to produce on offense. And he has not been doing that at all. Same thing with this other rookie who was drafted above him, Zachary Rasacher. However, I will say that Zachary Rasacher finally had a good game yesterday against the Knicks in a win. And he scored 33 points, 11 for 18 from the field, 6 of 10 from 3, along with 7 rebounds, 2 blocks, 3 steals, along with 3 assists. And his averages for the season, 12 points, 37% from the field, 29% from 3, which is not good. 3 for 6, not 3 for 6, 3.6 rebounds, excuse me. But aside from that one good 33-point game, the rest of the games have been rather mediocre. And again, I just don't really expect this kind of inefficiency coming in from a rookie. Coming in from the number 1 pick in the draft, excuse me. The points and the production, that makes sense. I don't really expect a rookie to produce all that much in their first season. But the efficiency and the lack of production as a number 1 pick, I feel like should be taken a little bit more seriously, considering how most people in the media and most people that follow the NBA, they're more focused on Bronny and his successes and just saying how bad of a player he is. Look at the player that's ranked number 1, that was picked number 1 in the draft. Bronny is getting more slack despite him being a second-round draft pick than the number 1 and the number 2 pick in the draft. I genuinely just don't agree with that whatsoever. It does not make sense to me. Now, excuse me. Next player on this list is the rookie from Toronto, Jonathan Mogbo. And he is, again, a player that nobody really expected to be able to produce all that much. He's not shooting the ball very well from 3. In fact, he's shooting 16% from 3. He's averaging 6 points, 4 rebounds, 1 assist, and 50% shooting from the field in the 9 games that he ended up playing. Now, on the road, he's not much better. In fact, he's actually worse when he's on the road. And he's on a really mediocre team, actually less than mediocre, the Toronto Raptors now, since, they don't have Scotty Barnes. But again, you have to take a lot of these with a grain of salt because not everybody in this draft class is all that competent, as sad as it is to say. And Next player on this list is the one and only Connect 4, Dalton Connect. He is, he's a bit of a wild card, and, I'm not expecting much production coming in from him in his rookie year, but I will say that his production is a little bit meh. Like, it's not great, but it's not awful, and, it's just meh, really. He had one good game against the Cavs where he scored 18 points, and shot 6 for 12 from the field, but in the recent game against the Memphis Grizzlies, he ended up scoring only 3 points and shot 1 for 7 from 3. Again, still adjusting, and the difference between him and really the rest of the other players, in my opinion, is that while I do think he is a steal, he's also a shooter. And expecting a shooter to be able to understand the pressure and handle the pressure early in an NBA season is not ideal. Like, that is a very rare thing that happens in the NBA. And which is why I don't really expect him to... I don't expect him to be something, like, just yet, assuming he develops really quickly. Again, we never know. But having him at number 8 is not that bad. Again, it's not like he was picked number 1 or number 2 in the NBA draft, which I would take a little bit more seriously, if that makes sense. But again, these performances, he's averaging 6 points, 42% from the field and 32% from 3, which again is not bad, but again, he's only playing in 17 minutes, so we'll see how that production goes on through the rest of the season. But at number 8, I don't really see much of a problem with his production. But because, shooters shoot. That's just what they do. Next player on this list is Jamal Shead. I have no idea how to pronounce that name, so forgive me if I completely messed that up. He's also playing for the Raptors. 6 points, 1 rebound, 4 assists, 40% from the field, and 27% from 3. So not really all that different from the Jonathan Mogbo in production and in efficiency. So I don't really have to say much about that because, again, it's more or less like the production and more or less the expectations to be the exact same. And finally, the last player on this rookie ranking list, Tristan da Silva. And he didn't really play in a majority of the games to start the season, but so far in the games where he has played, he's played in 5 of them. In the first game against the Cavs, he scored 17 points, went 6 for 8 from the field and 3 for 3 from 3. And he has not been able to repeat that efficiency, go figure. He was taken on, he played 2 30-minute games, but after those 2 30-minute games, against really competent teams, might I add, the Thunder and the Mavericks, they decided to put him back down to around 20 minutes, and he became a lot more efficient in the game where he played in only 20 minutes. But in his games that he's played, he's averaging 7 points, 43% from the field, and 42% from 3, which is rather efficient. Again, he gets a big boost because of that 3 for 3 game that he played against the Cavs, and since then, he's only been able to hit 1 3-pointer in a game, like in each of the games afterwards. But again, these are the best players so far, just given by the sample size that we have. And if you notice, there is no Reed Sheppard on this list. That's because Reed Sheppard is playing horrendously bad. Like, he is averaging, I want to say maybe 3 points per game, which is really, really not ideal for somebody who had so much hype, especially in the Summer League. Yeah, his numbers are bad. But again, he has not played in double-digit minutes yet, aside from 2 games, one of them against the Knicks and then the other one against the Spurs. But 3 points per game, 39% shooting from the field, and 35% shooting from 3. That's just not it. Obviously, that's not ideal. But again, he's only averaging 10 minutes, so we'll have to see if he ends up developing into the player that everybody sort of expects him to be. As of right now, not so much. And another player that is also not on this list, Donovan Clingan for the Blazers, but that's mainly because he's coming off of the bench. He's averaging 4.3 points, 5 rebounds, and 1.8 blocks in 13 minutes per game. In his first 8 games, he has started the season playing behind the Blazers' starting center, DeAndre Ayton, and has shown really strong defense statistically, which is honestly the reason why they picked him. He's a very solid defender, and that's the big reason why they ended up picking him. So obviously, a lot of players that a lot of people expected to live up to the hype are still not on this list and are not living up to the hype yet, but the season is still young, so we will have to see what happens in the future. But that's all I've got for the rookie rankings so far, And, I completely forgot one more. I totally forgot to show you guys De Silva in his face. There you go. There's Tristan De Silva. Again, not very, how do I say this? Not very efficient, and that's really a common trend with the rest of these players in this draft. But again, the season is still young, and I don't really expect anybody to adjust that quickly, unless you're Luka Doncic. And again, this class, from what I know, does not have a Luka Doncic, but we'll see what happens in the future. So that's all that I have on the rookie rankings, and those are all my opinions on the players in the rookie standings. But aside from that, we're going to go ahead and go into the third segment where I talk about some hot takes that I saw from certain fans and I saw from certain users over the internet. We're going to talk a little bit about those hot takes right after this short break. So be sure to stay tuned if you guys are interested.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
And we are back with the third segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this third segment, we are going to be looking at some hot takes that I saw coming from the internet. And again, these are just, fan hot takes. I feel like they're interesting to talk about because I love talking about hot takes, and I like talking about how egregious I think some of them are, or how not necessarily egregious they tend to be. Again, these hot takes are random. These hot takes can do with something going on in the season. These hot takes can do with something overall in talking about basketball, like the first one. So, first hot take we have is from a user named NeroNYX. Again, I have no idea how to pronounce that. A lot of these users are going to be difficult to pronounce because, again, it's like, how do you pronounce their name? How do you say their name? Nobody knows except for them. So he says Michael Jordan would be a low-level star in today's NBA, which I think is a little bit, it has some truth to it, but again, I feel like he's rather dramatic by saying low-level. With the way that the game is played, I genuinely have no doubt that Michael Jordan would adjust to how it's played. That's just what all the greats do. They work. They got especially with Jordan and his mentality, they work hard, they play hard. Given how he played back then, if you were to put that exact same play style back then into today's NBA, then maybe, he would be considered a low-level star. But really, when I think of Michael Jordan, the first player that immediately comes to mind is Kobe Bryant, and Kobe was able to adjust to both the past way that the NBA was played in the early 2000s, and then later on in the later 2000s where he adjusted and got a three-point shot. And, he was still rather consistent at shooting the three ball, even in the early 2000s, when the three ball was starting to become a little bit more popular. So I don't think there's really any reason to suggest that Michael Jordan would be a low-level star when Kobe Bryant was considered to be one of the best players in the NBA while he was playing. Not to mention the defense, which is half of the game, and a half of the game that Michael Jordan excelled at. Now, would he have gotten as many championships? The verdict is still out for that. No idea. Again, you need a team to win championships, which is something that I think a lot of MJ fans tend to overlook. A lot of people think it was just MJ doing all the heavy lifting when that's not true at all. But with that hot take, I think there's a little bit of truth in that, but I don't think it's entirely the truth, and I don't think that's fair to say that. I mean, Kobe was able to do it, so I have no doubt that Michael Jordan would be able to do that as well. And again, I'm a LeBron fan, so I feel like I would. The fact that I'm even showing any sort of sympathy to Michael Jordan should say a lot. But again, this is Michael Jordan we're talking about here. So Cam Thomas, this is the next hot take coming in. Now, it's actually from T-He-He. Yeah, that's his name, right? So Cam Thomas will lead the league in points per game. Not a very, how should I say? It's not that big of a hot take because he is one of the better scorers in the NBA as of right now. Like he's one of the very few pure scorers in the NBA right now. Hold on just 1 second. Points per game leaders, because I believe that Anthony Davis is like ranked number 1 in points per game. Not entirely sure. I'm going to have to go ahead and look at the stats real quick. Yep, Anthony Davis is leading in points per game, 32 points per game. Giannis Antetokounmpo is second with 31. Jason Tatum is third with 30. Paulo Banchero is fourth. Jokic is 5th, Luka 6th, 7th is LaMelo, 8th is Kevin Durant, 9th is Dame Lillard along with Tyrese Maxey, and all the way down, where is Cam? Cam Thomas is ranked at number 18th, averaging 24 points per game. Now, the thing about Cam Thomas is he's a bit of a wild card. There are games where he's just on and he's going to drop 40, but then there are other games where he puts up a lot of stinker performances. So while I do think that this is definitely feasible, I don't think that that's what's going to happen once the season concludes. I think that Anthony Davis is probably going to continue being the leading scorer in the NBA. If not, then maybe somebody like Joel Embiid. Like that, those are the two who I think have the best chance of leading the NBA in points per game. But again, the season is still young, so anything can happen. Ice Cold G is in the chat saying cap. I mean, again, it's like, Cam Thomas, he's a wild card, but I feel like Joel Embiid or Anthony Davis could be the players that end up leading in points per game, especially Joel Embiid. He's done it before. He could probably do it again, especially given how he's not going to have as big of a sample size as the rest of the players, because again, he's most likely not going to be playing in these back-to-back games. So in terms of averages, he might have the better chance of being able to continue and hold his points per game average more so than the next man up. Next hot take is coming in from Ande He. A lot of he-he's so far. I don't know if they got a Michael Jackson thing or something like that, but he says that the Cavs will be the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. This right now is probably like the least hottest take that we've read so far. The Cavs, they've started the season 9-0. This is the first time that the Cavs as a franchise have started the season 9-0 in their entire history of the franchise. Like, yes, even without LeBron, they've done it. They've somehow been able. This is the first time. And last season as well, and the season before that, this is around the first few years where the Cavs have actually looked like a competent franchise and a competent organization without LeBron James there to guide them. And this is also one of the very few things that the Cavs have been able to do that is noteworthy without LeBron James. I mean, a 9-0 start to the season is incredible, and they now remain the only team that has not lost a game yet in this season. More on that later when we do the NBA recap talking about the Thunder. So not much that really needs to be said because it's not really that hot of a take in my opinion. Now, the Hornets will make it to the Eastern Conference Finals this year. This is coming from Swaggy B. Definitely not going to happen. I mean, the Hornets right now, they are ranked at number 9, and compared to the rest of the teams that are ranked above them in the Eastern Conference and the teams that I think have a really good chance to compete in the Eastern Conference, I don't see this team making it to the conference finals. I think just based off of what we know so far in this season, it's starting to look like a Cavs versus Celtics conference finals. I'm still holding out on the Knicks. I still think that, they can turn around their season. But again, so far it's starting to look like Cavs versus Celtics. They do seem like they are the best teams in the Eastern Conference as of right now. Next one, John Wall's prime was better than Derrick Rose's. This one I just honestly don't really agree with. Derrick Rose ended up winning an MVP. John Wall did not win an MVP at all in his prime, regardless of the fact that John Wall's stats were really, really good. I mean, he was one of the few guards that was able to average a double-double. I believe he averaged around like 25 points per game and 11 assists. It was a while ago since he played, so forgive me if I got the numbers a little bit wrong. But again, his prime, like, it's more or less, in terms of playoff success, it was more or less the same as Derrick Rose. So the only thing that I can really come up with is the fact that Rose was able to win an MVP before he ended up getting injured. And I feel like a lot of people would have rather picked Rose on the a prime Derrick Rose as opposed to a prime John Wall. And this hot take came from Anthony 4K. Don't agree with it at all. Now, the next hot take is coming in from 480 Geronimo, and he thinks that the NBA Finals matchup is going to be the Suns against the Knicks. So far, the Suns are actually ranked number 1 in the Western Conference right now. I don't expect that success to be continued on into the postseason just based off of their style of play, running heavy on the isolation and Kevin Durant and Devin Booker's efficiency. Anything bad can happen if they just have put up a stinker of a game. And the tendencies of that happening when they're the only ones really doing anything with the ball in their hands is rather high. So I don't really expect the Suns to be able to make it to the finals. And the Knicks, you could argue that they'll have a much tougher road to get to the finals because they'll have to face off against either the Celtics or either the Cavs. The Cavs seem to be a lot better than the team that they were last year, despite the fact that they still have the same players. And Knicks might still be adjusting to having Karl Anthony Towns. Meanwhile, the Celtics, not to mention the fact that Kristaps is not even healthy yet, and they're only 7-2, they could be a really big problem. That team has been playing with each other for the longest time, and they have the chemistry to back it up. So I don't really agree with that. The next hot take is coming in from Lucas Seaton. Forgive me if I messed up that name. Again, it's Instagram users. He thinks that Chet Holmgren is going to win Defensive Player of the Year and makes an All-NBA team. I don't agree with that at all. I think Victor Wembanyama is going to end up winning Defensive Player of the Year. I mean, he had a game where he had 9 blocks, which is ridiculous. And then it's about the All-NBA. It's possible. Again, his team is one of the best in the Western Conference, so that ultimately would give him a boost in, being able to make an All-NBA team. Next hot take coming in from Hamden N is that the Nuggets are going to finish 7th in the Western Conference. They're going to finish as the 7th seed. Now, I don't really think that that's going to happen. The reason why is because 2 teams are in the playoff race right now, the Warriors and the Houston Rockets. I'm a little bit more scared of the Warriors being in the postseason, more so than I am with the Houston Rockets being in the postseason. I don't think Houston is going to be able to keep this up long term. And not only that, I think the Lakers are also going to end up taking that 4th seed and possibly making the road into the playoffs a little bit more difficult for Denver. But the way that the standings look like right now, it does seem like they will finish in the 7th. So maybe not that hot of a take coming in from Hamden. But again, we'll see once the season progresses. So far, the Nuggets, they've ended up winning the last 2 games that they played, I believe. And we'll see how it goes. Actually, they ended up winning the last 3 games that they played. So we'll see if they're able to turn it around. The fact that they don't have Jamal Murray and Aaron Gordon on their roster, it might be a bad thing, but who knows? It might also be a good thing. We'll see. And then the last hot take coming in from Sadish Patel. Forgive me if I messed up that name again. The Heat are going to beat the Celtics in the playoffs. Now, this is sort of like a weird little trend that the Miami Heat and the Celtics go through. It's like one year the Miami Heat beat the Celtics, then the next year the Celtics beat them. Then one year the Miami Heat beat the Celtics, then the next year the Celtics beat them. So right now, at this point in time, we are on the year that supposedly Miami is going to beat the Celtics. So if we're going to be superstitious and we're going to follow along with that trend, that might end up being the case. Not to mention the fact that Giannis Antetokounmpo could get traded over to the Miami Heat, which could spell some bigger problems for the Boston Celtics, depending on what the Miami Heat end up giving up in order to get Giannis Antetokounmpo. But again, we'll see how this works. Not entirely sure. Anything can happen. But if we're going to go based off of, the patterns that we've seen and the way that history in basketball tends to repeat itself, right now we are on the year where the Miami Heat are expected to beat the Celtics. Just going off of the pattern. I think it's a little bit too early to tell. And we'll have to see how the rest of the offseason, well, not the offseason, but the rest of the NBA season goes down. So those are all the hot takes. Now we're going to go ahead and go into our NBA recap. I'm going to have to speed through a little bit. Actually, no, I won't speed through this. I'll speed through the predictions because, the predictions are going to be, it's just 3 games that I got to predict. So in the 4th segment, we'll take our time and we'll dissect the games that happened the other day. And then afterwards, we'll go into a really short recap. So stay tuned if you guys are interested right after this short break.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
And we are back with the 4th segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this 4th segment, we're going to do our NBA recap and talk about the games that went down yesterday. So let's go right ahead and dive right in because it is going to be a little bit of a longer segment than the rest of them, given how there were so many games that ended up happening. So I ended up getting this prediction wrong. Atlanta Hawks, they ended up beating the New York Knicks. And in all thanks to Zachary Rasacher's ridiculous performance, 33 points, 7 rebounds, and 3 assists. Of course, when I say that Zachary Rasacher and Alexander Czar aren't playing well, of course, Zachary just has a monster of a game with 33 points, was the leading scorer for the Atlanta Hawks in this matchup. Trae Young ended with 23 points along with 10 assists. I mean, he always gets 10 assists. And he did shoot 7 for 21 from the field, which is not all that efficient. But again, 23 points is 23 points. And Jalen Johnson, he also scored 23 points, 10 for 18 from the field, 3 of 6 from 3. Dyson Daniels did not play well in this matchup, only 6 points with 3 for 16 from the field. So just imagine how much more they could have won by had he shot a little bit more efficiently. Now, on the Knicks side, Jalen Brunson ended with his 21 points. He did go 8 for 18. Karl Anthony Towns scored 34 in this matchup with 11 for 23 from the field and 5 for 9 from 3. Very efficient. It just wasn't enough to beat the Atlanta Hawks tonight. OG Anunoby, 5 for 13 with 15 points. The Knicks as a team shot 46% from 3, which was really, really good, compared to the Hawks who shot 39% from 3. And really the big difference just came in the fact that the Hawks ended up getting way more possessions than the Knicks in this game. They had 100 possessions compared to the Knicks who only had 84 possessions. And it's kind of difficult to beat a team that's ultimately taking way more shots than you are because, while they might be taking more shots, that would mean that more shots are going to have a better chance of falling. That's just how it works. And so I got this game wrong. Another game that I got wrong was the Celtics beating the Warriors. They ended up losing, mainly because they did not have Jaylen Brown in this matchup. They did have Jason Tatum, Derek White, and Drew Holiday. But again, this Boston Celtics team is not healthy yet, especially since Kristaps has not played a game yet. So, but aside from that, Tatum scored 32 points. Derek White scored 26 points. Drew Holiday did not play well in terms of the points production. He did get 9 rebounds and 8 assists, but again, the scoring from Drew Holiday, they really needed a lot more out of him. He went 3 for 11 from the field and 0 for 6 from 3. And Jason Tatum shot 50% from the field overall. Just an incredible performance from Tatum, but again, it just clearly wasn't enough. If they had Jaylen Brown in this matchup, I really think that they would have ended up beating the Warriors, but again, Steph Curry is just, the owner of the Boston Celtics, it seems like. He dropped 27 points, 9 assists, 7 rebounds, along with 4 steals. Shot 4 for 9 from 3, 8 for 17 from the field. Buddy Hield just steps in, says, "I'm Klay Thompson," goes 6 for 11, and goes 4 for 7 from 3. And Andrew Wiggins, 6 for 14 from the field, 0 for 3 from 3. But again, just a solid performance overall coming in from the Warriors. But again, the Celtics were rather short-handed. So in my opinion, it makes a lot of sense why they ended up losing in this matchup, because it's not the same team. I mean, not having Kristaps and not having Jaylen Brown is a big problem for the Celtics. Now, I know what you guys are thinking, especially you guys who don't like Tatum. How much help does Tatum need to beat the Warriors? Well, it seems like the Warriors are a pretty solid team this year. And if you don't have a healthy team and like your expected production coming in from other players, and with Drew Holiday playing the way that he's played, you're not going to get that production from him. I really feel like if they had Jaylen Brown, they would have ended up winning this game. Same thing has to be said with the next game that I got wrong, which was the Lakers matching up against the Memphis Grizzlies. I thought Anthony Davis was going to play in this game. He did say in a post-game interview, when LeBron was having the post-game interview, he screamed, "I'm not out," and he told it to reporters. He ended up being out. Of course he did. And the Lakers, of course, ended up losing, despite the fact that LeBron finished the game with 39 points, 7 rebounds, and 6 assists. He scored as many points as how old he is. He shot 15 for 24 from the field, 6 for 11 from 3, and 3 for 4 from the free throw line. He was on a different level. It makes no sense how a guy who's 39 years old scores as many points as his age. And the rest of the team, of course, completely underperformed. Austin Reeves has been so inefficient, it's bad. 7 for 17 from the field, 2 of 9 from 3. D'Angelo Russell, also inefficient, 4 for 12 with 12 points and 2 for 9 from 3. And everyone else was just mediocre. Dalton Knecht, 1 for 7 from the field with only 3 points, less than mediocre. Cam Reddish was all right, 5 for 7 from the field, 15 points. But again, without Anthony Davis, they were basically going to lose regardless. And I didn't expect Anthony Davis to be out, and I expected him to be in, and I think if he was in, they would have ended up winning this game, despite the fact that they lost 131 to 114. Jaren Jackson Jr., 20 points. Santi Aldama, 11 points and 12 rebounds. Ja Morant, 20 points, 5 assists. And Jalen Wells, 20 points as well. And, excuse me. Jaren Jackson Jr., 8 for 13. Ja Morant, 7 for 17. And Jalen Wells, 7 for 10. And again, this team shot 50% from the three-point line. That's a very difficult team to beat when you're shooting like that from 3. And not having Anthony Davis definitely doesn't help matters either. Next game, the Mavericks, they ended up beating the Bulls. I expected this to happen. The Bulls are just not a competent team. The Mavericks also ended up playing at home. They won 119-99. Luka Doncic, 27 points, 13 assists, 7 rebounds. Kyrie Irving, 17 points. Klay Thompson, 13 points. And Daniel Gafford ended with 17 points to go along with that. 7 for 9 from the field as well. Kyrie Irving shot 7 for 11, incredibly efficient. Klay Thompson, 5 for 10 from the field, again, rather efficient. Not that efficient from 3, 3 for 7, but regardless, 5 for 10, that's 50%. And on the Bulls side, nobody played all that well. The leading scorer was Vucevic with 14 points, and that really says all you need to know. 7 for 10 from the field. Again, all you need to know. Now, the next game that I do want to talk about is the Kings going up against the Raptors. And the reason why I want to bring up this game is because Sabonis became the first player to record a triple-double without a missed shot and without a turnover. 17 points, 11 rebounds, 13 assists, 6 for 6 from the field, 5 for 5 from the free throw line. Again, first player ever to have a flawless triple-double in an NBA game, which is absolutely incredible in my opinion. Again, no one has ever done this before. So, super efficient, incredible player. If he's not an all-star this season, there is a problem. DeMar DeRozan, 27 points, 11 for 21 from the field. Keegan Murray, 22 points, 9 for 17 from the field. De'Aaron Fox, 21 points, 5 for 17 from the field. But it should also be noted that Keegan Murray ended with 12 rebounds to go along with that. So again, solid performance coming in from the Kings and their starters. This was sort of the start that I expected the Kings to have. And of course, the Raptors, they haven't really been all that impressive, especially without their best player, Scotty Barnes. RJ Barrett, he played pretty solid, 23 points. Grady Dick, who I expect to be the most improved player of the year, he's averaging 20 points per game, but in this game he only scored 7, so not really that good of a performance, 3 for 10 from the field from him. And then there's also Davion Mitchell, who went 8 for 11 with 20 points. But again, just wasn't enough to combat against the Sacramento Kings, especially with the Kings and their lack of three-point attempts, which was, in my opinion, was going to be a little bit of a problem, especially since they shot 28% from three. But aside from that, they were just fine in this matchup because the Raptors, they shot 29% from three. So again, cancels out. Next, the Hornets, they ended up beating the Pistons. I expected this outcome to happen. The Hornets ended up winning 108-107 on a game-winning tip-in coming in from, I believe it was Bridges. I didn't watch the game, so I can't really tell you, but let me go ahead and look at the play-by-play. Let me see. No, it was Brandon Miller who made the putback. Excuse me. I thought it was Bridges because, Bridges is just, he tends to get a lot of putbacks in these games. And Bridges, he did end the game with 27 points. LaMelo Ball ended with 25 points, 8 assists, 6 rebounds, along with 2 steals. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I think LaMelo Ball is better than Anthony Edwards. He did shoot 10 for 23 from the field, which is not all that efficient, but again, 25 points is 25 points. Now, on the Pistons side, Cade Cunningham, another triple-double, another loss, 20 points, 10 rebounds, 10 assists. Jaden Ivey, 21 points. And really, that was basically all the production coming in from the Detroit Pistons. They could have won this game, but again, it was a last-second tip-in that ultimately gave the Hornets the lead. It was a really solid way to end the game. Like, again, it was close, but you win by a mile, you win by an inch, doesn't matter, you win. Now, Pacers, they ended up matching up against the Magic. As I expected, the Pacers, they ended up beating the Magic. The game was much closer than what I thought, though. It was 118-111. This is what happens when you have a team that doesn't really play defense with the Pacers, right? And Franz Wagner, he ended the game with 28 points, 8 rebounds, and 6 assists. And the rest of the players, they did play solid. Jalen Suggs with 15 points. Goga Badadzi, forgive me if I messed up that last name, 10 points along with 12 rebounds. But the Pacers, their offense was just way too good. Benedict Mathurin, 20 points, 11 rebounds. Miles Turner, 17 points, 10 rebounds. Tyrese Halliburton, 17 points, 4 assists. And really, the team was just better. Like, that's really all the team was just better than them. And they shot way better from three than them as well, even though this game was still rather close. I mean, the Pacers shot 46% compared to the Magic's 28%. And they also shot a lot better from the field. It was surprisingly a close game, but again, the Magic, they ended up taking way more shots than the Pacers. So, next game, the Houston Rockets, they ended up beating the Spurs in a blowout win, 127-100. Victor, only 15 points and 6 rebounds, along with 3 blocks. Chris Paul, 10 points and 4 assists. One of my friends thought that Chris Paul was going to be the most improved player of the year. That's definitely not happening with the way that he's playing right now. And really the rest of the Spurs and how they've been playing, again, it's not ideal. I expect a lot more efficiency coming in from Victor, but he's only shot 1 for 6 from 3 in that game. And just looking at his stats and his efficiency, he's only averaging a 47% effective field goal, which is not that, again, it's not that great. Like, it's really not all that solid. And just trying to go ahead and look at the field goal percentage, he is shooting 46% from the field. Actually, no, he's shooting 42% from the field, which is worse than what it was last year. And he's only shooting 21% from three, which is way worse than what he was shooting last year. So, again, the season is still young, but I do expect a lot more production coming in from Victor, and I do expect him to live up to the hype, so what gives? Next, for the Houston Rockets, 21 points and 10 assists coming in from Fred VanVleet, 21 points from Jalen Green, 16, 5, and 4 from Alperen Sengun, and really, like, the team just played a lot more efficiently than the Spurs did in this night, despite the fact that the Houston Rockets only made 10 three-pointers and shot 37% from three. They shot way better than the Spurs did in the field, 56% compared to 44%. Next, the Cavs. As I mentioned before, the Cavs are the only flawless team in the NBA right now. They won 131-122 against the Pelicans. Donovan Mitchell ended with 29 points. Jarrett Allen ended with 16 and 14. Garland ended with 14 and 9. Evan Mobley with 15 and 9 as well. And Karis LeVert coming off the bench ended with 16 points. Again, this is just a classic Donovan Mitchell performance. 10 for 20 from the field, 50%. 3 for 9 from 3, but again, 29 points is 29 points. Excuse me. The Pelicans, they had Zion in this matchup. He did end the game with 29 points. and 9 for 18 from the field. They also had a good production from Jose Alvarado, 27 points, 10 for 14 from the field. Brandon Ingram got 20 points on 20 shots. But really, this team is just not at full strength yet. And going up against the Cavs, who are at full strength, not ideal. The Denver Nuggets, 124-122 was the final score. They ended up winning by just 2 points, snapping the Thunder's winning streak. Michael Porter Jr., 24 points. Nikola Jokic, 23 points, 20 rebounds, 16 assists. Russell Westbrook, 29 points, 6 rebounds, and 6 assists. It should be noted that the Denver Nuggets are 3-0 when Russell Westbrook starts, by the way. So that's a really good sign for Denver, especially seeing as now they're not going to have Jamal and Aaron for a couple of games. But again, this is a very solid performance coming in from Russ and Jokic and everyone else along with that. Chet, 15 points, 10 rebounds. Jalen Williams, 29 points, 10 rebounds. SGA, 28 points, and 6 assists along with that as well. So it was a really close game. Can't really blame the OKC for losing that one when Russell Westbrook is playing like that. Next, the Heat, they lost to the Suns. 115-112 was the final score. Nurkic, he ended with 20 points and 18 rebounds. KD ended with 32 points. Devin Booker ended with 22 points. Bradley Beal only ended with 7. Grayson Allen has not been all that efficient at all this year. He had 12 points, 3 for 10 from the field. Devin Booker, 9 for 17. Kevin Durant, 13 for 23. And Nurkic was by far the most efficient player on the team with 6 for 8 from the field. And Bradley Beal, 3 of 9 from the field. Not all that ideal. But again, a win is a win for this team. And looking at the Heat and their matchup, Tyler Hero played really, really well. 28 points, 6 assists. Bam Adebayo, 12 points, 12 rebounds. Jimmy Butler was very quiet in this matchup with only 15 points, 6 for 13 from the field. And that was that. Clippers, they ended up beating the 76ers. I don't know if you guys know this, but Paul George used to play for them, by the way. Paul George, he was probably the most efficient player for the entire 76ers. 7 for 9 from the field, but again, it just wasn't enough against the Clippers. Kelly Oubre Jr., 8 for 12, 18 points. On the Clippers side, Norman Powell has been incredible, 26 points along with 6 assists. Harden, 18 points, 3 steals, 6 assists. And everybody else, they played really well against the 76ers. Of course, they don't have Joel Embiid, so it makes total sense. And that was all of the games. That's the recap. So now we're going to go ahead and go into the final segment, which is giving my predictions for these games. This segment is going to be very short just because we are low on time. So I'll be right back after this short break. So be sure to stay tuned. And we are back with the fifth and the final segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And we are a little bit low on time. I did spend a lot of it talking about, I did spend a lot of it in like the third and the fourth segment, so I'm going to try to make this a little bit quick. Anthony Manzano's in the chat. Hi, how's it going? We're going to do the predictions for these games tonight. I'm going to try to not take up as much time just because we are a little bit low on time. But again, I'm not going to make this 3 minutes long or anything like that because that would be ridiculous. So the first game that's going to be taking place, none of these games are going to be on are going to be televised. By the way, it's going to be on. The one that's going to be taking up the most attention, most likely, is going to be the Timberwolves going up against the Bulls on NBA TV. They all start at 8 o'clock, later on tonight. And like I said, the Bulls, they're going to match up against the Timberwolves. I think that the Timberwolves are going to come out and win this game. Manzano's in the chat. What did I miss? You missed me talking about Joel Embiid being eligible to play against the Knicks, Tyrese Maxey getting injured. So, it's like, you get Joel Embiid, but then you have to get rid of Maxey just because Maxey's injured. So kind of like a give and take. I also talked about the top 10 rookies in the NBA right now. I looked at the rankings and where they were ranked. I did a little bit of a mistake there, but again, everyone makes mistakes, so I don't really take it to heart. Then I talked about some hot takes in the third segment, and then I did my recap just in the fourth segment. So that's what you missed. And now we're doing the predictions. We're going to see if I can finally get a perfect prediction, because again, I messed up the other day. I did not think that Anthony Davis was going to miss this game against the Grizzlies, so I thought the Lakers were going to win. I also didn't know that Jaylen Brown was going to miss this game for the Celtics, and I thought the Celtics were going to win, especially since they played at home, but that didn't happen. And I did not expect Zachary Resacher to drop 33 points after I was just saying how rather inefficient he's been, considering how he's the number one pick in the draft. Of course I messed that up, right? It always happens. But every other game I ended up getting... Actually, no, I got the Thunder game wrong because Russell Westbrook wants to drop 29 points. It happens. But we're going to try to get a flawless day. We're going to try to get a flawless prediction. We've got to do it. It's got to happen at least once. And I'm very stubborn. I like to call it being resilient. So I think the Timberwolves are going to end up winning in this matchup. They are, of course, the favorites because they seem to be the much better team than the Chicago Bulls. The Bulls, they do play at home, but again, I don't think the Bulls have much firepower to be able to combat against the Timberwolves. And I don't think that they have much perimeter defenders either. I do feel like Anthony Edwards against Zach LaVine is going to be a little bit of a ball, assuming that Zach LaVine ends up playing. He did end up playing. Actually, no, he did not end up playing in the last matchup with the Bulls against the Dallas Mavericks. So I don't know if he's I don't know if he's hurt or anything. But aside from that, whether he's in the game or not, I think the Timberwolves end up winning. And now the next two games that are going to be played, they're with two terrible teams. Actually, four terrible teams technically. So it's the Blazers against the Spurs and the Jazz against the Bucks. So This is difficult, mainly because these are two really bad teams. So I'm going to pick the Bucks to win this matchup. If the Bucks lose to the Utah Jazz, if they lose to the worst team in the NBA, I don't think there is no way that they're going to come back with the rest of the season. I'm very reluctant to pick the Bucks in winning this game, but I cannot deny the talent of Giannis Antetokounmpo and Damian Lillard. Not to mention, if the Bucks win this game, it won't change my power rankings at all. If the Bucks lose this game, it's going to change my power rankings a lot, mainly because I'm going to move the Utah Jazz from the worst team to better than the Bucks, and then the Bucks will be the worst team in the NBA, which is crazy to say considering how they have Damian Lillard and Giannis Antetokounmpo, who are arguably some of the top 10 players at their position. And Giannis is like top 1 at his position. And Dame, I don't know, where would we put Dame? Would it be top 10? I don't know. Maybe slightly below the top 10. I haven't done that yet. I should probably do that a little bit later. But if we're going off of last season, maybe just below the top 10, maybe a little bit. But again, they are the top players, some of the top players at their position, especially Giannis. So if they lose to the Jazz in this matchup, they play at home too. If they lose this game, and if that's the game that I end up predicting wrong, I am done picking the Bucks to win any game after that. I am sorry, I'm done with them. This is the last time that I'll be picking the Bucks. And then in the next game, the Spurs, they match up against Portland. Now, this one might be a little bit more interesting of a game. I have no idea how that Bucks game is going to go. And I'm going to pick the Spurs in this matchup, mainly because the Spurs are going to have home court advantage. I don't feel like the Spurs have much of a defender to be able to guard Victor, but again, Victor has not been all that efficient recently in these games. But I don't know. He could be due for a game. And excuse me. I will say that Portland, they do have talent, but I have a lot of faith in Victor and in the home crowd giving him some sort of an advantage. That's just me, but we'll see later on. If there was any game that I think is going to come down to the wire, it's probably going to be the Blazers against the Spurs. I feel like that one is going to be the closest game. And the Bulls and the Timberwolves, that could also be a really close game, but I expect a really solid game coming in from Julius Randle and a pretty solid game coming in from Anthony Edwards. I think Julius Randle might end with more points than Anthony Edwards in this matchup, but we'll see how it goes. And let me just go ahead and check. Yeah, I mean, the Timberwolves, they last ended up beating the Charlotte Hornets, and that was a pretty easy win coming in from them, despite the fact that Randle and Anthony Edwards, they did not really produce all that much. Let me just see. Yeah, Randle, he went 4 for 10 in that game, and Anthony Edwards, he went 6 for 11. So again, not that much, but again, still rather solid. And I think the Timberwolves are going to come out on top in this game. So in hindsight, Timberwolves, Spurs, and Bucks. I'm probably going to get all of them wrong, but we'll see how it works. We'll see how the games go down. I'm probably going to, if I can, if there was any game that I'd want to tune into, I'd probably tune into the Bucks, because I really like Giannis. I'm a big fan of Giannis. I think Giannis is definitely, like, aside from Jokic, he is the best player in the NBA. And I know the record doesn't show that, but it's not his fault. He's dropping like 30 points in every single game. Same thing with Damian Lillard, but they're still losing because the team seems to lack the depth and the coaching to be able to get over the hump, which is the problem that the Bucks have, and it's a really, really big problem. I'm just going to pick them here because I got faith in Giannis. I don't think there's anybody on the Jazz that's going to be able to stop him. Maybe he goes off for 50 points. I'm leaning more towards like 32, 35 points in this game, and Dame is probably going to have a solid game as well. I don't think the Jazz have much of a defense to combat against the Bucks. And I did mention earlier, like in a different in a previous segment before, when the Jazz, they ended up winning their first game the other night. They ended up, when was that night? When did they win that game? It was a while ago, and the Jazz winning a game is almost like unheard of, really. Let me just see. The last team that they ended up beating was the Chicago Bulls, which also plays into the the Timberwolves beating the Bulls, because I mean, if the Bulls end up losing to the Jazz, then doing the math, it would seem like the Bulls, they're probably going to lose to the Timberwolves as well, seeing as the Timberwolves are a much better team. But again, anything can happen in today's NBA, so we'll see. But I do expect the Jazz to continue losing a lot of games, especially just based off of what we've seen. So far, they're the worst team in the Western Conference, probably the worst team in the NBA. But that's all that I really have to say, and that is the end of the show. So thank you so much for tuning into the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us. Remember to subscribe to the show, leave a positive review. It really does make a difference. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. As usual, we love to hear what you guys have to say during the show, whether you have a hot take, burning question, anything you've been dying to share. We're all ears. If you really want your comment or question to get noticed, you can use Super Chat. Just click on the $ below the chat box, and you can send in your comments and your donations that way. Or you can go ahead and use the link displayed below the ticker, gsmcpodcast.net, and you can send in your comments and donations that way as well. So thank you so much for tuning in, everyone. I am your host, Nelson, and as always, take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the